Hey, welcome to the AI Timeline channel. Thanks for watching. Please consider giving it a like and subscribing for more informative content. Today, we're diving into a world where, well, algorithms meet aesthetics. We're talking AI and art. We've got a whole stack of articles and research here about how AI is, well, kind of shaking up the creative scene. And let me tell you, it's getting wild out there.
It really is. What's so fascinating is how AI has gone from, just crunching numbers to creating these incredible canvases. And it seems like it happened practically overnight. We've gone from AI composing those, what are they called? Jingles? Yeah, jingles for commercials, to AI generated art being auctioned off for thousands, even millions of dollars.
Okay, hold on. Millions. That's insane. It really makes you wonder, like, what even counts as art in the age of AI?
That's the million-dollar question, right? A lot of the sources we've been looking at point to the traditional view. Art is human. It's about expressing emotions, culture, those lived experiences, things that AI, at least for now, doesn't really have. It works with algorithms, right?
Yeah.
Spotting patterns in data.
So on the one hand, you have art, this deeply human thing, and on the other hand, you have AI, which is basically a pattern recognizing machine. Even if it is sophisticated, no wonder some people are skeptical.
Right.
Like, can AI really feel a painting the way a human can?
And that's where this whole debate gets really interesting. One article I was reading actually dives into how AI art is even created. And it's not just about mimicking like you might think. Apparently, it actually uses these things called neural networks. Have you heard of those?
Neural networks, yeah, vaguely, it's like a computer brain, right? But
Yeah.
how does that create a painting?
Exactly. Imagine a computer program that, well, it kind of learns like we do, but instead of school books, it's being fed like millions of images, millions. And these neural networks, especially this one type called GANs, or let me see if I can remember, generative adversarial networks, they're designed to not just recognize patterns, but to actually generate completely new images based on those patterns.
Okay, so it's not just copying that. It's more like it's learning the rules of the game and then coming up with its own moves, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of mind-blowing.
It is. Think of it this way. Imagine feeding an AI every single portrait that's ever been painted, like from the Renaissance all the way to Picasso. It analyzes everything. Brush strokes, color palettes, composition, all those elements that make a portrait.
Yeah.
And then it uses that knowledge to create something new, something that's never been seen before, but it's still, it still feels like a portrait.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just replicating, it's actually generating.
Hmm.
But but does that make it art? Like, where do we even begin to draw the line?
Now you're getting into the really complex questions because, you see, while it's technically impressive, some people argue that AI art is missing something. It lacks the why behind human choices. You see, a machine might use a certain color because, statistically, it fits, but a human artist might choose that same color to evoke a specific emotion or a memory, and that's a crucial difference.
So it's less about the finished product and more about the process,
Yeah.
the intention behind it. Is that what separates human art from AI art?
That's one way to look at it, yeah. But then that just raises even more questions. Like, what if the AI's process, its way of, well, thinking becomes so complex that we can't even comprehend it?
Yeah.
Does it then develop its own form of intention, even if it's, different from ours?
Okay, now my head is really spinning. This is getting deep. So we've got AI creating art, but is it really art? And if so, what does that mean for human artists?
Well, that's where we get into some truly exciting and maybe even a little scary territory. Actually, one of the articles, I think it was the one about AI in music. Of, AI replacing artists.
Really? I mean, I got to say, it's kind of easy to imagine that happening. Like, if AI can make art that's just as good or even better than what humans can do, it's not a big leap to imagine artists being out of a job.
Oh, absolutely. It's a valid concern. But this article, it frames AI as more of a collaborator. Like, instead of replacing artists, it's working with them.
Okay, I can see that.
Like, think about it. Throughout history, there have always been new tools emerging in art. Photography, for example, that didn't replace painting, did it? It just gave artists another way to see and interpret the world.
So you're saying AI could be like the next photography, like a new tool that changes the game but doesn't necessarily end it.
Exactly. Imagine an artist using AI to kind of break through a creative block,
Yeah.
Let's say you're a painter and you've got this idea for a landscape, but you're stuck on how to make it unique, how to really capture the feeling you want.
Oh, I totally relate to that. You just hit a wall sometime.
Exactly. So You feed the AI your sketches, maybe some keywords, describing the mood, the colors you're envisioning. And then the AI generates like dozens, maybe even hundreds of variations, pushing your initial idea in directions you might never have even considered.
Wow.
Suddenly, you're not just staring at a blank canvas anymore, you're exploring a whole gallery of possibilities.
That's really cool. It's like having an army of assistants, each with their own, unique take on your vision.
Precisely. And from there, the human artist, they step in using their intuition, their emotions to curate, refine, and ultimately breathe life into that final piece.
So it's still a collaboration.
Absolutely. And it's not just happening in visual art either. One article even mentions this musician who used AI to actually generate melodies based on his own brainwave patterns while he was listening to certain music.
What, brainwave patterns? That's next level stuff.
Right. It's like translating the feeling of music directly into new melodies. And then he took those AI generated melodies and kind of integrated them into his own compositions, creating something totally new.
So it's this like feedback loop. Human emotion feeding into the AI, and then the AI feeding back into the human's creative process.
That's the beauty of it. It's not about, one replacing the other. It's about this potential for something really symbiotic, a fusion of human and artificial creativity.
Okay, I have to admit, that does sound pretty exciting. But let's talk about the elephant in the room here. If an AI is creating art, even with, human input, who owns it? Who gets the credit? That feels like a legal and ethical minefield.
It is. It absolutely is. And it's something that's being, well, fiercely debated right now. Some people argue that since the AI is ultimately a tool like a paintbrush or a musical instrument, that the human using the tool should own the copyright.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. After all, you don't, credit the paintbrush for a masterpiece. You credit the painter, right?
Exactly. But then there's the counter argument. What happens when the AI becomes so sophisticated that its creations are, indistinguishable from or even better than human-made art?
You're saying at some point, the AI becomes more than just a tool. It starts to look like an artist in its own right.
That's exactly it. That's the heart of the debate. Where do we draw that line between tool and creator? And who even gets to decide? Is it the programmers, the artists, the lawyers?
It really makes you think, and what about the art itself? Like if an AI is trained on millions of images or songs created by humans, can anything it generates really be considered like truly original? Or is it just a really, really sophisticated remix?
That's another huge question. And it gets to the very definition of originality. Is it even possible for anything to be truly original? Or are we all just remixing existing ideas, consciously or not?
Okay, now we're getting really philosophical.
Yeah.
But you do have a point. I mean, even human artists are influenced by, what they've seen, heard, experienced.
Exactly. So where does that leave AI art? Is it simply a reflection of the data it's been fed, or can it actually transcend its programming to create something genuinely new?
These are really tough questions, and I get the feeling there aren't any, easy answers. But before we spiral down the rabbit hole of existential art criticism, maybe we should move on to some of the other points these articles brought up.
Agreed. While we may not have all the answers or even all the questions yet, these questions about authorship, originality, even the very definition of art, they're at the forefront of this entire conversation.
And they're definitely worth thinking about, especially now as we're entering this new era of AI-influenced creativity. Speaking of which, another point that came up a lot in these articles was the question of, well, feeling.
Yes. The soul of art, or some might say the lack thereof when it comes to AI.
Yeah, it seems like every article we read mentioned this whole idea that AI art, it just lacks that human touch, that spark of emotion or meaning that makes art, well, art.
It definitely comes up a lot. One article even quoted, I think he was a sculptor, and he said that looking at AI art was like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically he said it was like looking into a beautifully crafted mirror, technically flawless, but ultimately reflecting nothing.
Ouch. Okay, that's a little harsh, but I get what he means. Like, a machine can create something that, looks like art, sounds like music, but can it ever really make us feel something the way human art can?
That is the million-dollar question. Humans, we create art to express ourselves, right? To explore our emotions, connect with each other. We imbue our creations with meaning, with stories, with our own unique perspective on the world. And AI, well, at least for now, it doesn't really have that capacity. It can analyze patterns, it can replicate patterns, but it can't, replicate the human experience.
So does that mean AI art is like doomed to be this emotionally sterile thing?
Mhm.
Technically impressive, but ultimately, well, soulless.
Not necessarily. Some people actually argue that this lack of human bias, so to speak, could be AI's greatest strength. One article even suggested that AI could create art that's like truly alien to us, something we can't even begin to imagine because, well, because it's not limited by our human experiences.
Okay, so instead of trying to make AI art more human, maybe we should be embracing its otherness. Like,
Yeah.
what if we stopped comparing it to human art and just, appreciate it on its own terms?
Exactly. It might not evoke the same emotions or tell the same stories, but it could offer us a glimpse into a different kind of creative process, one that's driven by algorithms and patterns instead of, well, emotions and experiences.
Okay, yeah. That's a really cool way to think about it. It's like AI art isn't here to, replace human art. It's here to kind of expand our definition of what art can even be.
Precisely. It challenges us to rethink our assumptions, to push the boundaries of creativity, and to just, consider that there might be other ways of seeing and experiencing the world, even if we don't fully understand them, at least not yet.
Wow, this whole deep dive has been, well, it's been quite a whirlwind. We've gone from algorithms to like artistic revolutions, from neural networks to like the very nature of creativity itself.
It's a lot to process, but
Mhm.
but that's the thing about this whole AI and art thing. It's a conversation that's really just getting started.
And it's raising like way more questions than answers.
Yeah.
Is AI art really art? Who owns it? Can it ever be truly original? And what does it all mean for the future of human creativity?
Those are questions for, well, for all of us to think about, really. And
Yeah.
there are no easy answers, no right or wrong opinions. But one thing's for sure, that line between human and machine, it's getting blurrier every day. And that's bound to lead to some, let's just say, fascinating and challenging times ahead.
Well, on that note, we'll leave you with this thought. The next time you encounter a piece of art, whether it's a painting or a song or even a sculpture, just, take a moment to consider who or even what created it. You might be surprised by what you discover. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI and art. We'll see you next time.